It's not really a complicated mural when it comes to symbols and icons. We have on one far end of the piece a large portrait of Oscar Zeta Costa. There's these really interesting photographs that were taken of him by Annie Leibovitz, and we got access to these photographs. They were in an archive somewhere. We got access to these images as part of this project. In this kind of bank of images, there were several that kind of showed his personality. I picked one of them. I used it as the foundation for the actual large-scale portrait that's on the wall. In each of them, he was wearing his sleeveless undershirt or his muscle shirt. Kind of his hair was super frazzled and crazy, like really wild. He had a lot of different expressions. He had one that was like serious and stern. He had a bunch that were like goofy and funny and playful. Some that showed like his kind of his anger and being mean. But I think we chose one that was just kind of like a serious and stern one. Not really angry, but one that was like kind of showed his sternness that you see in the image. He just kind of looks serious. As you go down the portrait where his heart would be, you see a fist, and so that fist represents, Acosta goes through this process in his history where he's trying to find identity and he's trying to come to terms with who he is, who he represents, the work that he does, and throughout that process what ends up happening is that he builds this consciousness as a Chicano, as a Mexican American. And so that fist it has multiple meanings, right? One is his physical strength, because he's this large burly man and he's just strong. But then it also represents raza, right? And social justice and struggle, and the fist that was raised by Chicano students during the Chicano moratorium and the walkouts and the entire Chicano movement that was taking place. It was fueling him at this point, right? And so that fist represents that fuel and that strength and that passion for justice and for community. But then coming out of that fist, the way you would have from your heart, have arteries and have different veins and stuff that are represented usually when you see kind of a traditional heart image. You see roots, you see veins, you see arteries coming out from inside this hand and kind of spreading out across the chest of the figure. And then it kind of transcends him. It leaves his body and turns into what is then the brown buffalo, which he identifies as, right? The buffalo is an interesting image because then from the horns of the buffalo we have this fire that's rising up. And that fire is representative of the fire of the people, the passion of the people, movement, resistance, revolution, strength, right? And then, it's interesting because, the phoenix rising from the ashes or coming out of fire, rebirth, coming out of fire and destruction creates power, right? There's this energy around that. And so at the top of the flames, we see a small group of people holding placards and signs. The sign that you see says Justicia on it. We've got the scales of justice, right? Balance. And that was appropriate because of the subject matter, but also because the wall is actually on the side of a law firm. As the flames come across the mural, again, because from that fire and from destruction comes, and from that passion comes birth, we see plant life. Now, coming from the original fist that was in Acosta's heart, there's also a branch that's forming, right? That shows that growth is coming from that passion and that power. And so over here we see that fist now being regrown through this vine and this stalk. And then that continues into the rest of the design. Over here we have three figures. In the center we have a graduate growing from, some people would call it a corn stalk. I don't know that we would identify it specifically as a corn stalk, but it's plant life or agriculture, right? For me as an artist, that's extremely important because my parents were migrant workers. I specifically grew up in the fields. My childhood was in the fields, and so agriculture and plant life is really important, and so the image is really relevant to my own lived experience. Next to the graduate, you have images of the brown berets. Again, that's directly tied to the legal work that Acosta was doing when he was supporting the young people and the participants in the Chicano moratorium. as you keep going, so there's another interesting transition that happens here where the fire gets replaced by plant life, and so you see the flames turn green, and so as that happens, it keeps transitioning across the panels, and then at the very end of the mural over here on the far end is an image of Acosta and a buffalo, almost reflecting on this process of growth and development. I think this is I think it's symbolic of personal reflection and kind of looking at what his process was to get where he got to in his lifetime, that we know of, that we're aware of.